When Elena Martinez accepts a marriage proposal from mysterious tech billionaire Gabriel Montenegro to save her dying brother, she thinks it's just a business arrangement. But some secrets are too dangerous to stay buried. Asterisk, welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight, we bring you a tale where love is tested. Secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story touches your heart, like, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning when Elena Martinez had exactly 17 euros left in her checking account and 3 overdue bills stacked on her kitchen table like a house of cards waiting to collapse. She almost threw the cream-colored envelope away, assuming it was another debt collector using expensive stationery to make their threats seem more civilized. Then she saw the Montenegro tech logo embossed in the corner. Elena's hands shook as she tore open the envelope, her mind racing through every possible connection she might have to Spain's most powerful tech empire. Her father had been a lawyer, but he'd handled small business contracts and family disputes. Nothing that would put him in Gabriel Montenegro's orbit. The letter was brief, formal, and completely insane. Miss Martinez, I am writing to propose a business arrangement that may be of mutual benefit. I have need of a wife for a period of 3 years. You have need of substantial financial resources. I believe we can help each other. If you are interested in discussing terms, please contact my office to arrange a meeting. Time is of some importance, as I would prefer to finalize arrangements within the month. The compensation would be sufficient to address your current financial difficulties and provide substantial security for your future. Sincerely, Gabriel Montenegro. Elena read the letter 3 times before the words began to make sense. A marriage proposal from a billionaire. To her, she looked around her tiny apartment, taking in the peeling wallpaper, the second-hand furniture, the easel in the corner where she painted when she wasn't working double shifts at the art restoration studio. This had to be some kind of mistake. Her phone rang, and Diego's name appeared on the cracked screen. Elena, the doctors want to see us this afternoon. I have the results from the specialist in Geneva. Elena's stomach dropped. They had been waiting 3 weeks for the consultation that might determine whether Diego's experimental treatment was even possible. 3 weeks of hope and terror balanced on a knife's edge. What time? 2 o'clock? Can you get off work? Elena glanced at the letter still clutched in her hand. Yes, I'll be there. 2 hours later, Elena sat in the oncology wing of Hospital Clinic Barcelona, holding her 19-year-old brother's hand as Dr. Vega delivered the verdict that would shape the rest of their lives. The treatment in Switzerland is promising, she said carefully. The preliminary results show a 70% success rate for patients with Diego's specific type of leukemia. But, Diego asked, because there was always a but in conversations like this. But the cost is substantial. The treatment itself, plus the required stay at the facility, would be approximately 800,000 euros. And it would need to begin within the next 6 weeks to be most effective. Elena felt the world tilt around her. 800,000 euros. She made barely 18,000 euros a year at the restoration studio. Even if she worked for the next 40 years without eating or paying rent, she couldn't save that much money. Are there any other options? She asked quietly. Dr. Vega's expression was kind but honest. The conventional treatments we can provide here will buy time. But given the aggressive nature of Diego's condition, I would estimate perhaps 6 months. 8 at the outside. Diego squeezed Elena's hand, and she knew he was trying to comfort her, even as they discussed his death sentence. After the appointment, they sat in the hospital cafeteria in silence, picking at sandwiches neither of them wanted. Diego finally broke the quiet. I don't want you to blame yourself when I'm gone. Don't talk like that. Elena, be realistic. We don't have 800,000 euros. We don't have 80,000 euros. Hell, we barely have 800 euros. Elena thought about the letter burning a hole in her purse. A business arrangement. Marriage to a stranger. 3 years of her life in exchange for enough money to save the only family she had left. What if there was a way? She asked carefully. What do you mean? Elena pulled out the letter and handed it to Diego, watching his eyes widen as he read, "This is real." "I think so. Elena, you can't be serious. Marry some random billionaire. What if he's a psychopath? What if he hurts you? What if he saves your life?" Diego stared at her, and she saw her own desperation reflected in his eyes. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me." "It's not a sacrifice. It's a choice. My choice." That evening, Elena sat in her apartment researching everything she could find about Gabriel Montenegro. The internet painted a picture of a brilliant but reclusive man who had built his tech empire from nothing. He was 29, graduated from MIT at 20, and worth approximately 2.3 billion euros according to Forbes. More importantly, there were no scandals attached to his name, no stories of mistreated employees or shady business deals. No history of violence or abuse. The worst thing anyone said about him was that he was cold and antisocial. Elena could live with cold and antisocial for 3 years. She picked up her phone, dialed the number from the letterhead. "Montenegro Tech. How may I help you?" "I'd like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Montenegro. This is Elena Martinez." "Oh yes, Miss Martinez. Mr. Montenegro has been expecting your call. How is Thursday evening at 7? Thursday's fine."
Excellent.
"The meeting will be in Mr. Montenegro's private office on the 42nd floor. Security will escort you up." Elena hung up the phone and stared at her reflection in the black screen. In 2 days, she would meet the man who wanted to buy her. As a wife, the man who might save Diego's life, the man who would either be her salvation or her destruction. She thought about her parents, dead 2 years now in a car accident that had left her and Diego orphans with nothing but debt and each other. What would they think of their daughter selling herself to a stranger? Then she thought about Diego, brilliant and brave and dying, who deserved a chance to grow up and fall in love and build the engineering projects he dreamed about. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Elena opened her laptop and began researching everything she could about business, marriages, prenuptial agreements, and how to protect herself when entering into a contract with someone who held all the power. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it smart. Thursday evening arrived. Gray and drizzly, the kind of Barcelona weather that made the Gothic quarter look mysterious and vaguely threatening. Elena stood at the base of the Montenegro Tech Tower, craning her neck to see the top floors, peering into the low-hanging clouds. The security guard who escorted her to the 42nd floor was polite but thorough, checking her identification twice and running her purse through a scanner that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. Gabriel Montenegro's office was exactly what she had expected: sleek, modern, and intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, while museum-quality art decorated walls that probably cost more to heat than most people's entire homes. Behind an imposing glass desk sat the man himself. Gabriel Montenegro was taller than his photos suggested, with the kind of perfectly tailored suit that could only be custom-made. His dark hair was styled with mathematical precision, and his green eyes were the exact color of expensive emeralds. He was handsome in the way that rich men often were, not naturally beautiful, but polished and refined until every flaw had been buffed away. When he stood to greet her, Elena noticed his hands were shaking. "Miss Martinez," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Montenegro." They shook hands, and Elena felt that spark of electricity she had read about in romance novels, but never experienced in real life. From the way Gabriel quickly released her hand, she suspected he had felt it too. "Please, sit." Gabriel gestured to a leather chair across from his desk, but instead of sitting behind the imposing barrier, he chose the chair beside her. The gesture was small, but significant, making the conversation feel less like an interrogation and more like a negotiation between equals. "I assume you have questions about my proposal," Gabriel said. "Several. I'm prepared to be completely honest." "With you?" Elena studied his face, noting the tension around his eyes, the way his jaw was clenched, as if he were bracing for impact. "Why marriage?" "If you need good publicity, there are easier ways to get it. My company is expanding into family-oriented markets. It's educational software, child safety applications, parental control systems. My board believes that a married CEO would be more relatable to our target demographics. It was a reasonable explanation. But Elena sensed there was more to it. And why me specifically? Gabriel's composure slipped for just a moment, and she saw something vulnerable flash across his features. Your father's law firm handled some contracts for my company several years ago. I remember him as an ethical man who treated his clients fairly. When I learned about your current situation, it seemed like an arrangement that could benefit both of us. You researched my family. Yes. Including Diego's medical condition. Yes. Elena leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. So you knew exactly how desperate I was before you made your offer. I knew you needed money. I also knew you were the kind of person who would do anything to save someone you loved. Those are qualities I respect, or qualities you could exploit. Gabriel's eyes flashed with something that might have been hurt. Miss Martinez, I want to be clear about something. This arrangement would be mutually beneficial, but it would also be completely voluntary. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, you would be free to leave with no penalties and substantial compensation. Elena pulled a folder from her purse. I had my own lawyer draw up some questions about the terms. Gabriel nodded approvingly. Smart. What do you need to know? They spent the next hour going through the details. The marriage would last 3 years minimum. Elena would receive a substantial monthly allowance, plus a lump sum payment large enough to cover Diego's treatment. She would live in Gabriel's estate outside Barcelona, but have complete privacy and independence. There would be no physical expectations or demands. What about public appearances? Lena asked. Occasional charity events, a few business functions, nothing excessive. I prefer to keep my private life private. And after 3 years, you would receive a divorce settlement substantial enough to ensure your financial security for life. Plus, of course, you would keep anything I had given you during the marriage. Elena stared out the window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. It was a generous offer. Too generous. What's the catch? She asked finally. The catch. Nobody gives away this much money without expecting something significant in return. What aren't you telling me? Gabriel was quiet for so long that Elena began to think he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The catch is that I've never done anything like this before. I don't know how. To be married, even in name only. I don't know how to share my space or my life with another person. I'm asking you to take a chance on someone who might fail at the most basic requirements of being a decent husband. The honesty in his voice surprised her. Gabriel, can I ask you something personal? He nodded. When was the last time you were in a relationship? A real one? Gabriel's laugh was bitter. College, maybe it's hard to know if someone likes you. Or your bank account when you have this much money. So you're as scared as I am. Terrified, he admitted. Elena looked at this powerful, wealthy man who was admitting his fears to a stranger and made her decision. I'll need a few days to think. About it? Of course. But Miss Martinez, if you're going to accept, I would need to know within the week. Diego's treatment timeline is a factor in my own planning. Elena stood and Gabriel rose with her. You'll have my answer by Friday. Thank you. As Elena walked toward the elevator, Gabriel called after her, Miss Martinez. For what it's worth, I hope you say yes. Elena looked back at him, standing alone in his enormous office, surrounded by expensive things and empty space. Why? Gabriel was quiet for a moment. Because I think we could help each other, and I think we both need help. The elevator doors closed between them. But Elena couldn't shake the image of Gabriel Montenegro looking lost in his own empire. As alone as she was in her tiny apartment, 2 days later she called and accepted his proposal. The chapel in Gabriel's estate was smaller than Elena had expected. With whitewashed walls and stained glass windows that cast rainbow patterns across the stone floor, fresh white roses filled every available space, their scent mixing with the Mediterranean breeze that drifted through the open doors. Elena stood at the back of the aisle in a simple cream-colored dress that Gabriel's assistant had selected. Hands clasped tightly around a bouquet she barely remembered accepting. Only 6 people filled the wooden pews. Gabriel's lawyer, his assistant, 2 required witnesses. Diego in his wheelchair, looking healthier than he had in months. A man she assumed was Gabriel's brother Marcus, who kept glancing nervously toward the door as if planning an escape. At the altar, Gabriel Montenegro waited in a perfectly tailored black suit, his hands clasped behind his back, staring at something beyond the stained glass window of St. Catherine. Even from this distance, Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid line of his jaw. "You don't have to do this," Diego whispered from beside her wheelchair. His voice was stronger now, the treatment already beginning to work, but his eyes were full of guilt. "Elena, we can find another way." "There is no other way," she whispered back, adjusting his blanket with shaking fingers. "And I want to do this. For you, for us." It wasn't entirely true. Over the past month, as the wedding preparations had consumed her life, Elena had found herself thinking about Gabriel Montenegro in ways that went beyond their business arrangement. The way he had personally ensured Diego received the best care possible, how he had called the hospital twice daily for updates on her brother's condition. The careful distance he maintained from her, as if he were afraid that getting too close might somehow hurt her. The organ began to play, a simple melody that echoed off the chapel walls. Elena took a deep breath and began her walk down the aisle. With each step, Gabriel came into clearer focus. His dark hair was perfectly styled, but she noticed a small cowlick at the back that had escaped his stylist's attention. His green eyes were fixed on her now. She saw something she hadn't expected in their depths: genuine nervousness. When she reached the altar, Gabriel extended his hand to help her up the single step. The moment their fingers touched, that same electric current she remembered from their first meeting sparked between them. "You look beautiful," he murmured, so quietly only she could hear. "Thank you," she whispered back, surprised by how much his words affected her. The ceremony itself was brief and formal. Father Rodriguez, who had known Gabriel since childhood, led them through traditional vows that neither of them had written. Elena found herself listening to Gabriel's voice as he promised to love, honor, and cherish her, wondering what those words meant to a man who had just bought a wife to solve his image problems. "Do you, Elena Sofia Martinez, take Gabriel Eduardo Montenegro to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward? For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Elena looked into Gabriel's eyes as she answered, surprised by the intensity she saw there. "I do." "Do you, Gabriel Eduardo Montenegro, take Elena Sofia Martinez to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Gabriel's pause was so slight that only Elena noticed it. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I do. By the power vested in me by the Catholic Church and the government of Spain, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Gabriel, you may kiss your bride." This was the moment Elena had been dreading. The moment their business arrangement would be sealed with the most intimate gesture two people could share in public. She tilted her face up toward Gabriel's, expecting a brief, perfunctory kiss that would satisfy the legal requirements and nothing more. Instead, Gabriel cradled her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones as if he were memorizing the feel of her skin. When his lips touched hers, the kiss was soft, reverent, and filled with something that felt suspiciously like promise. The small gathering erupted in polite applause, but Elena barely heard it. All she could focus on was the way Gabriel was looking at her, as if she were something miraculous he had never expected to find. "Mrs. Montenegro," he said softly, and the name sounded different on his lips than it had in her imagination. The reception was held on the estate's terrace overlooking the sea. A string quartet played soft jazz as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that rivaled the roses in Gabriel's gardens. Elena sat at the small head table, still feeling surreal about the simple gold band now adorning her finger. Gabriel had disappeared shortly after the ceremony to take a phone call, leaving her alone with Diego and the strange collection of wedding guests. "He seems different than I expected," Diego said, accepting a glass of sparkling cider from one of the servers. "Different how? Less cold?" "The way he looks at you, Elena. That's not how a man looks at a business arrangement." Before Elena could respond, Marcus Montenegro approached their table. Up close, she could see the family resemblance to Gabriel. But where Gabriel was controlled and precise, Marcus seemed restless, almost agitated. "I wanted to congratulate you, Mrs. Montenegro," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Brother is a lucky man, thank you." Marcus glanced around the terrace, then leaned closer. "Can I give you some advice?" "About Gabriel?" Elena nodded, curious despite herself. "He's not as complicated as he pretends to be, but he carries guilt about things that aren't his fault. Don't let him push you away when he inevitably tries to protect you from imaginary dangers." Before Elena could ask what he meant, Gabriel returned, sliding into the seat beside her with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that. Business emergency." "On your wedding day?" Marcus asked, his tone sharp. "Business doesn't stop for personal milestones," Gabriel replied evenly. But Elena noticed the warning look he shot his brother. The tension between the two men was palpable, charged with some unspoken history that Elena didn't understand. Marcus excused himself abruptly, leaving her alone with her new husband and brother. "Is everything okay between you and Marcus?" Elena asked. Gabriel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Marcus has been going through some difficult times lately. He's not entirely himself. It was clearly a dismissal, but Elena filed the information away for later consideration. As the evening progressed, Elena found herself studying Gabriel from across the small dance floor where he was fulfilling his social obligations, chatting with Father Rodriguez and his lawyer about business matters, even at his own wedding reception. He was an enigma wrapped in a perfectly tailored suit. Generous enough to save her brother's life, but cold enough to negotiate a marriage like a merger agreement. Careful to maintain physical distance from her, but gentle when he did touch her. Formal in his speech, but she had caught glimpses of warmth, humor, even vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior. "Would you like to dance?" Elena looked up to find Gabriel standing beside her chair, hand extended in invitation. The quartet had shifted to a slower melody, and most of the other guests were engaged in quiet conversations. "I should probably warn you," Elena said, accepting his hand. "I'm not much of a dancer. Then we'll figure it out together." On the small dance floor, Gabriel drew her into his arms with surprising gentleness. One hand settled at her waist while the other clasped her fingers, and Elena was startled by how perfectly she seemed to fit against him. "Thank you," Gabriel said quietly as they swayed to the music. "For what?" "For going through with this. For saving my reputation and your brother's life at the same time. For being gracious about an impossible situation." Elena looked up at him, studying the planes of his face in the soft light. "Why do I get the feeling there's more to this arrangement than you've told me?" Gabriel's steps faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" You could have chosen anyone. Any woman in Spain would have jumped at the chance to marry Gabriel Montenegro, even temporarily. But you chose me, specifically. Why?" For a long moment, Gabriel didn't answer. When he did, his voice was so low she had to strain to hear him over the music. "Because when I saw your photograph in the newspaper after your parents' accident, something about your expression reminded me of myself. Like you understood what it meant to carry responsibility for people you love, no matter what it cost you personally." The honesty in his voice caught Elena off guard. "Gabriel, this doesn't have to be more complicated than we agreed," he said, quickly, as if regretting the admission. "I just wanted you to know that this decision wasn't arbitrary. I chose you because I respected your strength." As the song ended, Gabriel stepped back, the careful distance returning between them like a wall. "I should probably check on Diego," Elena said, needing space to process the unexpected intimacy of the moment. "Of course, I'll have my driver ready to take him back to the treatment center whenever he's ready." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of polite conversations and champagne toasts. By the time the last guest departed, Elena felt emotionally exhausted from maintaining her composure. Through the surreal experience of marrying a stranger, Gabriel walked her to the door of her wing of the house, stopping at the threshold like a vampire who needed permission to enter. "Sleep well, Elena," he said formally. "Tomorrow, we can discuss the household arrangements and your schedule at the art studio." "Gabriel," she said as he turned to leave, "this doesn't have to be completely impersonal, you know. We're going to be living in the same house for 3 years. We might as well try to be friends. Gabriel looked back at her, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or fear. Friends, he repeated, as if testing the word. I'd like that. As Elena closed the door behind her and leaned against it, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just married a man with secrets far more complicated than a simple desire for good. PR. The question was whether those secrets would bring them together or destroy them both. 2 years into their arrangement, Elena Montenegro stood in the conservatory Gabriel had built for her art studio. Afternoon light streaming through the glass walls as she applied the final touches to a portrait of Diego. Her brother smiled back at her from the canvas, healthy and vibrant after his successful treatment in Switzerland. You captured his stubbornness perfectly. Gabriel's voice came from behind her. Elena didn't startle anymore when he appeared without warning. Somewhere over the months, she had grown accustomed to his quiet presence, the way he moved through their shared spaces like a ghost, uncertain of his welcome. He gets it from our father, she said, not turning around. The Martinez men never knew when to quit. A useful trait. There was something different in Gabriel's voice today, a warmth that had been slowly building between them like embers finally catching flame. Elena set down her brush and turned to face him properly. He stood in the doorway wearing dark jeans and a soft gray sweater instead of his usual business attire. His hair was slightly mussed, and there was paint under his fingernails. Got it. You've been working on something, she observed. Gabriel's cheeks actually flushed. I may have been attempting to fix the garden shed. The door was sticking. Gabriel Montenegro doing manual labor. Should I call the newspapers? Please don't. Board of directors might stage an intervention. The easy banter between them still surprised Elena. 18 months ago, they could barely maintain a conversation that lasted longer than discussing household logistics. Now, they found themselves talking about books over morning coffee, debating art techniques during evening walks, sharing comfortable silences that felt more intimate than most people's conversations. I have news about Diego, Elena said, wiping her hands on a paint-stained cloth. He's been accepted to university. It's an engineering program at Barcelona Tech. Gabriel's face lit up with genuine pleasure. That's wonderful news. He'll be brilliant. He wants to meet you properly, not just the formal introductions at the hospital. He says any man who saved his life deserves a real thank you. Something flickered across Gabriel's expression, too quick for Elena to interpret. I'm not sure. That's necessary, Gabriel. Elena stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. He's my only family. You're my husband. Don't you think it's time you two actually got to know each other? I'm your husband on paper. Are you? Duh. Question hung between them, loaded with 2 years of growing familiarity, of shared meals, and quiet conversations of the way Gabriel now left books he thought she'd enjoy on her nightstand. How Elena had started buying the specific coffee he preferred without being asked. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Elena, we agreed. We agreed to a business arrangement. But business partners don't usually know each other's favorite songs or argue about whether Picasso's Blue Period was self-indulgent. They also don't usually live in the same house or attend social events together. Elena moved closer still until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. What are you afraid of, Gabriel? I'm not afraid. You're terrified. I've watched you for 2 years now. You're comfortable with business, with keeping people at arm's length, with maintaining perfect control over every situation, but the moment anything becomes personal, you retreat. Gabriel turned away from her, walking to the windows that overlooked the Mediterranean. This arrangement has worked because we've maintained appropriate boundaries. Appropriate according to whom? Gabriel, when was the last time you went on an actual date? When was the last time you let anyone get close to you? That's not relevant. It is to me. Elena followed him to the window, standing beside him as they looked out at the sunset, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. I've been thinking about something, about why you really proposed this arrangement. Gabriel's hands clenched at his sides. I explained my reasons. You gave me a business explanation, but I think there's more to it. I think you're as lonely as I was. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of waves against the cliffs below. Loneliness isn't a good reason to complicate things, Gabriel said finally. Maybe not, but connection is. Elena turned to face him fully, studying his profile in the golden light. I know you feel it too. It's the thing that's been building between us. It's the way you look at me sometimes when you think I'm not paying attention. The way you remember every little thing I tell you about my family, my dreams, my fears, Elena. The way you touch me. Gabriel's head snapped toward her, his eyes wide. Not often, Elena continued softly. But when you do, when you help me with my coat, or steady me when I stumble, or brush paint from my cheek, you touch me like I'm precious. It's like I'm real, not just a contract clause. You are real, Gabriel, said hoarsely. Too real. That's the problem. Why is that a problem? Gabriel looked at her for a long moment, something desperate and vulnerable moving across his features. Then, before Elena could react, he closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands. Because, he whispered, I never intended to fall in love with you. The kiss that followed was nothing like Elena had imagined their first kiss might be. It wasn't hesitant or businesslike or careful. It was desperate and consuming, filled with 2 years of unspoken longing and the weight of emotions neither of them had been willing to acknowledge. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, Elena whispered. I know. The contract. To hell with the contract. Elena laughed softly, surprised by the vehemence in his voice. Gabriel Montenegro, did you just curse? Elena, I need to tell you something. About why I really chose you. About my family. About the night your parents, Gabriel. Elena pressed her fingers to his lips, stopping him. Whatever it is, whatever secrets you think you're hiding, we'll face them together. Okay, no more barriers between us. Gabriel closed, his eyes leaning into her touch. You might not feel that way when you know the truth. Try me. For a moment, it looked like he might actually tell her. Then his phone buzzed with an urgent message, shattering the intimate bubble they had created. Gabriel glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. It's my lawyer. There's been a development with Marcus. Your brother? Is he okay? I don't know. I have to go handle this. Gabriel kissed her once more, quick and fierce. We'll finish this conversation tonight, I promise. As Elena watched him leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening with Marcus Montenegro would somehow change everything between them. She just didn't know yet whether it would bring them closer together or tear them apart completely. The private investigator's office smelled like stale coffee and broken promises. Elena sat across from Detective Martinez, no relation, despite the shared surname, watching him slide a manila folder across the scarred wooden desk. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. Mrs. Montenegro, are you sure you want to see this? Some truths change everything? Elena nodded, though her mouth had gone dry. 3 years of marriage had taught her that Gabriel Montenegro was hiding something deeper than social anxiety or business pressures. The way he flinched when she mentioned her parents, how he left the room whenever she spoke about the accident, the guilty look that crossed his face when he thought she wasn't watching. I need to know. The first photograph made her breath catch. A younger man with Gabriel's eyes and jaw, stumbling out of a Barcelona nightclub. The timestamp showed the date burned into her memory. October 15th, 3 years ago. The night her parents died. Marcus Montenegro, Detective Martinez said quietly, age 23 at the time. Gabriel's younger brother. Elena's vision blurred as she flipped through the police reports, the witness statements that had been mysteriously withdrawn, the security footage that showed Marcus's Ferrari speeding through the intersection where her parents, a Dest Honda, had been crossing legally on a green light. The Montenegro family's legal team moved fast, the detective continued. Witnesses suddenly couldn't remember what they saw. The responding officers received generous donations to their retirement funds. The whole thing was buried within 48 hours, Gabriel knew, Elena whispered, staring at a photo of Marcus being quietly escorted into a private facility. Not arrested, treated, more than knew. He orchestrated the cover-up, called in every favor, paid every price necessary to keep. His brother out of prison? The room spun around her. Every kindness Gabriel had shown her, every gentle touch, every moment she had started to believe their marriage might become something real, it was all built on a foundation of lies. There's more, the detective said gently. Elena forced herself. To look at the final document, a private medical report. Marcus Montenegro had been in and out of rehabilitation facilities for the past 3 years, struggling with addiction and guilt, and paying for his treatment, advocating for him, visiting him weekly, was his older brother. Gabriel has been taking care of him this whole time, she said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity.
Yes.
And according to my sources, Marcus wants to come forward, wants to confess and face the consequences. It's Gabriel who won't let him. Elena stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I need copies of everything. Mrs. Montenegro, what are you planning to do? She looked back at him, and he saw something fierce and unforgiving in her eyes. I'm going to go home and ask my husband why he married his victim. The drive back to the Montenegro estate passed in a blur of olive groves and coastal roads. Elena's mind raced through every interaction, every conversation, every moment of their 3-year arrangement. Had any of it been real? Or was she simply a pawn in Gabriel's elaborate game of keeping his family's secrets safe? She found him in his study exactly where she expected. Gabriel looked up from his laptop as she entered, and his face immediately shifted from concentration to concern. Elena, you look pale. Is everything all right? How's Diego? The mention of her brother, who was now thriving thanks to Gabriel's money, made her stomach turn. Even that generosity was tainted now. Diego is fine, she said carefully, setting her purse down on the leather chair across from his desk.
Thanks.
Thanks to the Montenegro family fortune? Something in her tone made Gabriel's hands still on the keyboard. What's wrong? Investigator. The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Gabriel's face went completely white, then gray, as if all the blood had drained from his body. Elena, October 15th. 3 years ago. Does that date mean anything to you? Gabriel closed his laptop with shaking hands. Please let me explain. Explain what? That your brother killed my parents? That you've been covering it up this entire time? That our whole marriage is built on your guilt? It's not what you think? Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. Really?
Then tell me what it is, Gabriel.
Tell me why you researched my family so thoroughly before proposing. Tell me why you chose me specifically out of all the women in Spain who might need money. Gabriel stood slowly like an old man, though he was only 29. Because I recognized you. From where? From the newspaper photos after the accident. You were standing at your parents' grave and you looked so lost, so broken, couldn't sleep. For weeks after seeing that picture, Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. So this was pity. No. Gabriel moved toward her, then stopped when she stepped back. It was guilt. It was knowing that my family took everything from you, and I was the only one with the power to give something back. By lying to me for 3 years. By making me fall in love with you while hiding the truth about who killed my mother and father. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Gabriel's eyes widened. You love me? I thought I did, Elena said coldly. Now I don't know what was real and what was manipulation. Elena, please. Everything between us has been real. Every conversation, every moment we've shared, every time I've held your hand or made you laugh. The only lie was the reason I found you in the first place. That's not a small lie, Gabriel. That's the foundation everything else was built on. Gabriel sank back into his chair, looking defeated. What do you want me to do? Turn Marcus in? Destroy his life to make amends for something I should have handled differently years ago. I want you to tell me the truth. All of it. No more secrets. No more protecting me from things you think I can't handle. Gabriel looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but not here. This conversation deserves honesty about everything. And these walls have heard too many lies already. He stood and moved toward the French doors that led to the terrace. Will you come with me? One last time, Elena followed him outside, into the golden light of late afternoon. As they walked toward the cliff edge where they often sat together, in the evenings, she realized this might be the last time she ever saw this view as his wife. Tomorrow, everything would change. The question was whether they would face that change together or apart. The Mediterranean sun cast long shadows across the terrace as Elena Montenegro stood at the edge of the cliff, her white dress whipping in the salt-tinged breeze. 3 years had passed since she first signed that contract, and now she understood why Gabriel had chosen her specifically, why he had researched her family so thoroughly, why he had trembled when they first shook hands. "You knew," she whispered, not turning around when she heard his footsteps on the stone tiles behind her. "You knew all along who killed my parents." Gabriel stopped breathing. She could feel his stillness, like a physical presence. "Elena, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" She spun around and he saw the devastation in her dark eyes. "That you've been living with the man whose reckless drunk driving took my mother and father? That you married me out of guilt, not business necessity? The contract papers scattered in the wind between them, along with the private investigator's report she had finally commissioned? Everything was there. Gabriel's younger brother Marcus driving under the influence 3 years ago. The cover-up. The payoffs to witnesses. The Montenegro family's desperate attempts to protect their heir to the tech empire. "I never meant for you to find out like this," Gabriel said, his voice breaking. "I was going to tell you after Diego's. Treatment was complete after he was safe." Safe, Elena laughed bitterly. "You married me to keep yourself safe, to keep me close, so I could never discover the truth and destroy your precious company. No." The word came out fierce, raw. Gabriel stepped closer, his green eyes blazing with something she had never seen before. Complete, devastating honesty. "I married you because I was falling apart with guilt, because every night I dreamed about the family I helped destroy. Because when I saw your picture, saw how much you looked like your mother, I knew I had to find a way to save what was left of the Martinez family." Elena's hands shook as she processed his words. "You recognized me? From the newspaper photos after the accident?" "I'd been following your story, your brother's illness, your struggles." "The marriage wasn't about protecting myself, Elena. It was about protecting you, about giving you everything my family took away. And Marcus." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "In rehab, has been for 2 years. He wanted to come forward himself, but I couldn't let him destroy his life when I could fix yours instead." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. Elena stared at the man she had grown to love despite herself, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the cold billionaire from the contract. Negotiations. Not even the gentle husband who had slowly opened his heart to her over 3 years of careful friendship. This was Gabriel Montenegro stripped bare, haunted, human. "You let me hate the wrong people," she said softly. "For 3 years, I blamed drunk drivers, blamed fate, blamed God. Never knowing the man responsible was living under your roof. I know. And I'll live with that betrayal for the rest of my life." Elena walked to the stone railing, gripping it until her knuckles went white. Below them, the estate garden stretched toward the sea, full of the roses Gabriel had planted because he noticed she loved them. Every kindness, every gesture, every moment of growing closeness between them had been built on a foundation of lies. "Diego knows," she said finally. Gabriel's face went pale. "What I called him this morning, told him everything." She turned back to him, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Do you know what he said?" Gabriel waited, looking like a man facing execution. "He said you saved his life. That whatever Marcus did, whatever guilt you carried, you turned it into something that gave him a future. He forgives you, Gabriel. Both of you, but you don't." Elena studied his face, memorizing every line of pain etched there. "I don't know yet, but I understand something now. You didn't marry me to ease your conscience. You married me because you were drowning, and saving us was the only way you knew how to save yourself." Gabriel took a shaky breath. "The contract expires next month. You're free to leave, Elena. Take everything. The settlement, the houses, all of it. You owe me nothing, and if I stay, then we start over. No contracts, no arrangements, no lies. Between us, just the truth of what we've become." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 3 years of secrets lifting from her shoulders. When she opened them again, Gabriel was holding out his hand, palm up, vulnerable and waiting. "I love you," he said simply. "It's not because I have to. Not because of guilt or contracts or business arrangements. I love you because you're the strongest person I've ever known, because you chose to save your family, even when it meant sacrificing your dreams. Because you taught me that some kinds of brokenness can be healed, Elena looked at his outstretched hand, then back at his face. If I take your hand now, it's not Elena Martinez making a deal with Gabriel Montenegro anymore? No, he agreed. Quietly, it's just us, whatever that means. She reached out slowly and laced their fingers together. This time, neither of them pulled away from the electricity that sparked between them. It means we start with the hardest truth, she said. I love you too, despite everything, because of everything. As the sun began to set over the Mediterranean, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Elena Montenegro made her final choice. Not out of duty this time, but out of love complicated enough to be real. The contract papers continued to scatter on the wind, carrying away the last remnants of their business arrangement and leaving only the difficult, beautiful truth of what they had chosen to build together. The end.